Okay, so the last few videos I've been discussing my ideas about what it means to be free and autonomous as an individual, and some of the flaws that have that were embedded in those ideas from the beginning, and that have also developed because of various things that have come into my life and gone out. And in that, I've been considering certain solutions to aspects of this idea around freedom. A lot of the ideas that I have around my own freedom have to do with being aloof in a certain sense from social constraints, be it through money or through trying to be so perfect and so compulsory that I'm above reproach. All of these things that I've done, or that I've kind of like attempted to do, however successful or unsuccessful, in their own right, they don't reflect a complete vision of what freedom is, because it's true that there are people that will try to hold one back financially and economically and career-wise. And it's true that sometimes it's difficult to find comfort because of certain forms of desperation, especially now. There's a lot of prejudice, there's a lot of like manufactured tension, where people try to make you desperate so they can take from you, because you're desperate, you're more likely to concede more in order to get the bare minimum. And people oftentimes try to create desperation to get a deal that's favorable rather than arguing or debating in good faith. And so there's kind of like there's a sort of discourse that I've adopted in order to avoid that, and that's another way that I've that's another kind of way that I've deployed this militant aggression in order to obtain these different kinds of freedom. And one thing I should say is that none of this is really outward. I'm talking about like mental constructions. Like, I haven't been like physically violent with people. I've like done things, I've said things that have been like more hurtful at times. I've also but the point is that I do things from a place of viciously defending this ideal of freedom that I've pursued for a very long time. And because I've encountered situations where it feels true, whether or not it is, that the world that certain types of freedom are more difficult to achieve, and those particular types of freedom have to do with money and power and career and all these different achievements. Freedom from social constraints, that becomes the focus, because it seems like there's a poverty of that kind of freedom. And then the other kinds of freedom, which maybe are more fundamental in some respects, like you need your food, your water, you need to be able to say screw you to people that are mistreating you. But I think that the more fundamental kind of freedom that has to be, or that seems as though it has to be sacrificed in order to obtain the other more basic freedoms, like your food, your water, it's a freedom in order to think abstractly. It's a freedom to be gentle and kind. And It's a freedom to be creative, and I think that these are different parts of the same thing, because I think that the idea, what's sold, is that you need to have money, you need to have food, you need to have all these different things. And these are true to some extent, but you need to have all of these things before you can obtain the sort of freedom that allows for one to soften, one to be kind, one to be creative, one to be like free thinking. And it's true to a degree because I think it's technically easier. It's easier to allow the mind to wander when you're not constantly considering the base concerns. But on another level, having those constraints is also important to actually giving meaning to the sorts of thoughts that one has. You know, thoughts can't be just allowed to float all the time. So there needs to be a balance between the kind of abstract thinking, the kind of softness and gentleness, and the real world constraints. Okay, I'm going to come back to this way.